Hello, friends. Welcome to Akulmach Live. And in this episode, we are going to discuss about how the AI can be useful for physicians. And to discuss this important subject, I am joined by Benny Rubinstein, who is joining us from Israel. And he is also a research scholar in the area of AI, especially in the medical field. He is actually alumnus of Harvard, um, and therefore he is doing his PhD there, and he is doing a lot of groundbreaking research, which he can share some nuggets of knowledge with us. All right. So without further ado, let's welcome Benny.
CK, thank you so much for having me back. It's great to be with you again.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Benny, and especially the subjects are so interesting. It's about AI, which is the latest trending subject and emerging technology. And you know, especially in the healthcare space, this has been used in many countries, um, especially all the developing and developed countries. It is used very effectively. Especially after COVID, the use of AI has become very prominent. So why we have to leave behind the physician's role and how physicians can be benefited? Your opening thoughts, Benny.
Yes, absolutely, CK. As I said, I'm not a physician myself, but I grew up in a house of my dad dedicated his life to medicine, and it's incredible to see how it's such a hard profession, such a critical one, right? Saving lives is probably one of the most critical tasks or jobs somebody could have. And at the same time, there is an abundance of challenges these days. You just mentioned a few of them, right? What if I'm in a rural area and I don't have access easily to data, to information, to medication, to whatever that is, right? Plus the science itself, it's evolving very fast, right? We talk about personalized medicine, all that. How can physicians keep up with all that? How can AI really help them? And by the way, we're all learning that AI is moving very fast. How can they keep up, right? They have a real job to do. Um, how do we integrate technology into medicine? It's both a science and an art.
Absolutely, and therefore, we must discuss among ourselves what are the most significant ways that AI can currently be used in healthcare, and especially support the physician in their daily routine, because some routines for physicians may be very mundane, and so therefore AI can participate in their daily routine and help their life. So if you can throw some light on this for the sake of our viewers.
Absolutely. So I would actually, to simplify a bit, maybe categorize those ways physicians can get the most out of AI in maybe two bigger, broader buckets. The first one is, how do you do things that you have to do and you've been doing for ages better and faster, more efficiently? And the second part is, how can you start doing things that truly you had no time or ability to do now and would really help yourself and your patients. So if you take the first bucket, I mean, look at the most classic things. Look at diagnostics, medical imaging, for example, right? I spoke yesterday with a radiologist in Rio, and she was just telling me how many AI projects they had in mind they couldn't execute because they're actually busy doing the work, right? They're going through a lot of images, they're having meetings, they're discussing things that perhaps machines, right, with good data could actually go through a lot faster and work, right, with X-rays, with MRIs. We've seen my job, just will my job be replaced? We will need humans to coexist with these systems. I'll just like to add one more medicine, right, and take care of their patients. That'll be awesome. We can't forget the amount of clinical documentation and let's call it bureaucracy, as Professor Donarielli likes to call it. How do we actually get rid of, doing that manually and just automate that? Wouldn't that be nice if electronic health records and clinical notes and all that could be sort of automated and I could just press a button and say, yeah, I agree, I want to change something, or that's it. So less paperwork and more patient care. So again, those are like classic things that we are dwelling with for ages. Patient triage and communication is another one. And then there's the new things, right? Things that Eric Topol wrote in his book, a while back, and they're now becoming real, which is like personalized medicine, drug discovery and development enabled by AI, and many other futuristic things that again will advance us in probably in the next few years by ages if we actually execute them well.
Well, Benny, when I was a small boy, when we are young, we all have to go to doctor, especially physician, because we are always catching some infection, some fever, etc. When we go to the doctor, I remember very vividly that when I was very, very young, like 5 years old, the doctors used to check my pulse, and by checking the pulse, the doctor will say, "Oh, you got this, and please take these 2 pills, red pill and blue pill, whatever, and then get yourself cured." And then after some time, as the medical science advanced, they started actually looking at the symptoms. Okay, so are you sneezing? Are you doing this? Are you showing this kind of thing? So you must be having malaria, or you must be having typhoid. And they used to treat, giving you some drugs and stuff like that. But today, before the advancement into AI, what is happening today? If you go to the physician, he will not examine you. He will say, okay, are you showing these symptoms? You please get these tests done. Meet me after 3 days with the test reports. Your first meeting is completely futile. Then you go back to the doctor again and show him all the report. And then he will say, okay, now you got this infection, you get these drugs. So comparing the old times with the new times, you go to the doctor, you immediately get help. Whether he is looking at your symptoms, or if he's checking your pulse, or he's checking your temperature, whatever the case may be. But in not so long ago, if you go to a doctor, he will say you will end up actually visiting doctor 3 times in order to get help. So the major worry is in the area of especially the physician, because physician is thinking that, okay, I will actually lose my relevance, and the patient is saying, oh, this is going to further get impersonalized. There was a time when I used to chit chat with the doctor, but now the doctor says, don't even come and talk to me, talk to my AI. So, sorry to give you this long narration, but how this physician will fit into, the actual physician will fit into the scheme of things in next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
So you just laid out, people say nowadays storytelling is the way to go, right? You just gave a real personal story that illustrates so much stuff that we could unpack here. I'll just pick a couple of them. I think the first one, what you have in there is an entire process, right? If you think about human relationships, you have a relationship with your doctor, right? It could be a very personal relation, it could be a very robotic relation, but you have a relationship with him or with her. The relationship is actually super important, right? It's not just me saying that. I experienced that as a kid. My dad was a pediatrician, and sometimes he would call his professor, Dr. Ataiji, because just by seeing him, I just automatically felt better. I actually didn't take any pills. But there is a whole point in that whole story, which is what are the actual, if you're going to interact, whether it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes, it doesn't matter, with your physician, what are the things that you want to be doing during that time, right? And if you look at the corollary of that, which is what we don't want to do, is what's happening today, unfortunately. You go and you do your 2 or 3 visits. You spend time in traffic, and you in the waiting room. You barely have eye contact with your physician, right? Your physician is busy looking at a screen, trying to get some data, trying to print your prescription. Well, nowadays it's digital, electronic, even better. Just typing something, say go to the drugstore. So that makes you feel 2 things, right? One is, why did I come here? Why didn't he just dispatch it over the phone? I could have done a video conference. Number 2, why he seems not to care about me? Why we're not even touching or talking or looking at each other? And those things are critical, right? So what we are actually saying is, with AI, lots of things can happen. Number 1, a lot of the administrative things, hopefully, rather than sitting there for 20 minutes filling out paperwork, will get automated, right? And all you have to do is make sure it's correct and sign, maybe. The other part of it is those 3 or 5 or 15 minutes, if you're lucky that you are with your physician, hopefully what AI can do is do the back work, right? Like you have your intern collecting data for you in your job and helping get organized for your day. Maybe AI can prepare a lot of the information that your doctor will need to make decisions. And guess what? It could even give him or her one or two options. Say, look, based on that, I suggest you do this or that. Now, your doctor could actually even interact with AI and say, probe it. I actually don't think that's a good way to do it. Why not do that? And, believe it or not, by having 2 or 3 interactions with an AI system properly trained, your doctor may actually not only be able to come out with a better plan for you, but he or she will be able to actually spend quality time with you. Will actually be able to ask you things or see things or hear things that, even though data could be collected through some devices, there's nothing like human touch, right? And so I guess the point is, let's just automate the things that have no human value, and let's actually be humans.
Well, absolutely. In fact, especially in the large hospitals, what people do is actually do queue management. So if you're going to a doctor, they will say, no, you can't see the doctor. You have to first go to the nursing center, get your vitals checked, get them noted down, and then the nurse will also check your vitals, key in some system. Doctor, when you actually meet the doctor, that meeting is only for 30 seconds maximum. I mean, if you try to communicate with the doctor, it will not go beyond 2 minutes. So from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. I think that is where, and especially there are a lot of crowds, so you feel very responsible that I must get out of this doctor's office quickly because others are also waiting in the queue. Now, when the AI comes in the picture, where is the time the doctor has? I think he or she will have even lesser time. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. And again, let's go back a little bit to the root cause there. I've been, as you know, doing my PhD on AI for medicine, and one of the benefits I have is I do know a lot of doctors. I took the Harvard course for AI in healthcare, and I have a lot of colleagues from my father, etc. And one of the things that you need to understand is, with or without AI, doctors have their own workflows, the ways they've been doing work over time. They have their own network, right? They have other physicians that they consult with or exchange ideas with or refer to. And so if you think about the new world in AI, one of the things that is happening now is once a primary care physician sees you, he or she may have very limited information about you, a very limited time. So it is possible that you'll be referred to a lab test or another physician, and that might prove to be an unnecessary step. Why? Well, because, better safe than sorry, right? So the physicians have also accountabilities and liabilities, and they better make sure that you're taken care of. But imagine that they had an AI system, which is kind of what we're investigating now, where they could not only consult other physicians in real time, but they could also get some little advice, right? They could actually describe the patient case, which is the experiment we're doing right now. And not only other physicians can tell her, I think you should send it over to this kind of specialist or this kind of test. The AI can also interject and even challenge people. They might say, well, have you thought about doing this way? Or why going to this kind of specialty if we haven't done that before? And so we're all humans, right? We're all learning. The best thing about AI is it helps us learn better. So this is just one example of how a very quick interaction with an AI system or AI-powered system connecting this physician to other experts could actually save quite a lot of days or even weeks in our lives by just spending another 5 minutes thinking a little bit more carefully. Thinking fast and slow is the book from Daniel Kahneman. Sometimes taking a little bit more time, going a little bit slower, gets us much farther.
I think this is a very good point, and this can help both physician as well as the patient. And of course, the time is money. Time is very valuable. So if we can save some time for both parties, I think AI can be a blessing in disguise. So that brings me to the second question: is what is the biggest challenge or barriers physicians face when integrating AI into medical practices, and how they can overcome these?
Yeah, and here's there's quite a list, my friend. I as I said, having grown up in a house of a physician, and we have a lot of empathy for the challenges that physicians face. A very, very difficult profession to exercise. And so when we tell them to just adapt to changes, just use AI, we're being a little bit, I would say, what would be the right adjective? We are maybe not thinking through it to the end of it. So there are specific barriers today, and there are certain ways to work around them. The first big barrier that the physicians have is incomplete or inaccurate data sets. Whether you're using an AI system or whether you're just looking at the patient's records, having a complete view, as you say, I need to check some signals, I need to check some lab results. If I don't have enough data, I can't really proceed very well, right? So there's a lot of concerns when you start using, sharing that kind of data over applications like AI systems. You want to make sure that the privacy of the patient is safeguarded, right? You don't want to have some data leaks or things like that. You want to make sure that you can pull data from different providers. One of the biggest problems in healthcare is, when I worked for Microsoft Research, we went to visit hospitals in both the US, in the UK, everywhere, where you had 200-300 systems within just a healthcare provider. So how do you actually exchange information between providers, right? So there's a lot of that that needs to be addressed, and it's not a simple solution, but there's encryption, anonymization techniques, lots of things for patient information. But you can also work with different regulatory bodies and adopt some sort of common frameworks for governance, data governance, and standardized protocols. But the second barrier, I think it's, to be honest, one of the most challenging ones, and that's the one I want to address next on my PhD research, which is trust, right? AI is basically change management, right? I mean, I don't know how much time you spend now with talking to your ChatGPT or your Claude or your Gemini or whatever that is, but AI is part of most people's lives this day, whether you are a teacher, a singer, or a physician. But we're not really trained for that. So how do you actually gain the trust of physicians? Well, first of all, to overcome the fear of, whether it's losing their human touch in healthcare, whether it's losing their job, whether it's, something horrible could happen because you don't trust the AI's decision-making process, you need to engage clinicians very early on. You need to get them into pilot programs. You need to get there to be a part of the design team, the MVPs, the POCs, right? That's what I'm doing right now, by the way. I can't just design systems if physicians are not on board. Providing very clear communications. How does that change the workflow? You would be amazed by even the most precise system, if it disrupts your workflow. It's a psychological thing for human beings. I don't actually necessarily want that intrusive step in there. So how do you minimize that? It's more of a UX, UI thing that is super important. And then, again, you need to reassure. There's a lot of discussions about the future of work, jobs, how they'll be impacted, and so on. But we need to emphasize doctors are not going away, right? We need to build systems that complement human expertise, not replace it. And that's obvious, but still there is a lot of confusion around that. So there's many other barriers. I won't go through all of them. But as I said, they usually center around this integration between different systems, regulatory, ethical considerations, and so on. And last but not least, I think I forgot to mention that education and training, right? I came out of my research when I did my systematic literature review with some thoughts that I had not had before. For example, how do we use AI not just for the actual exercising medicine, but how about training? How about medical education? Not only physicians who need to learn AI, but they need to they can use AI for expediting their own learning. So starting from medical training for physicians, for nurses, is going to be a big thing to overcome these limitations that we have today, these barriers and limitations and capabilities in trust and so on.
So Benny, as a layman, I think the way it is going to be really working and really successful is by actually engaging physician for your health, and it's like engaging for 24/7 type of support. So there has to be a gadget fitted near you, or sort of a wearable which is actually accessing your your body conditions, vitals, and what pathogens your body is actually having, and then communicating it back to the physician, so that physician knows, okay, there is an alert from this particular patient. I must now pick up the phone or email or chat with this patient that, okay, you got this symptoms which you are not seeing right now, but from the system support, from the AI support, I found out that you are going to contract this particular disease, and there is a preemptive disease, medicine for you, so that you can remain fit and healthy. I think that is the way it should work, isn't it, Benny?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we need to be very focused on prevention, right? Preventive medicine is obviously way better than just dealing with crisis and acute care and so on. The question also again is there's a few questions we touched upon. One of them is privacy, right? I mean, imagine that people are obsessed now with the concept of AGI, super agents and all that, right? Reid Hoffman is giving a course at Wharton this week, and it's fascinating. Professor Ethan Mollick was talking about some interesting things now, but they apply to both to education and to health. But imagine that not only I can wear my watch, that sort of captures some of the signals or other devices, even when I sleep. But imagine that those science fiction movies are not so distant, where I could actually have an implant, a little chip in my brain or in my body or whatever that is, that would transmit that. How much information do I want to share, right? And again, those are very complex questions. Of course, the more information we have, the more we can act, but we want to make sure that's going to be used in a proper way. So data eventually won't become the biggest problem. I think that one of the other challenges that I haven't mentioned, but it's kind of obvious, is cost, right? Resource constraints. Imagine that I could have any great technology in the world, but if there is a high upfront cost for infrastructure, people talking about these incredible costs that Microsoft and OpenAI and Google, etc., had to train their large language model systems. We're talking about, probably about less than 10 companies in the world that could afford those budgets. However, as we saw this week, a new model came out of China, and it's open source. It's not clear that it will be ever used for healthcare purposes, but you never know. But again, there are disruptive ways to lower the cost to actually get better results with a much lower upfront cost. And again, it really comes down to think about the workflow, as you say, right? I don't want to get alerts for nothing, but if I know that if I hit a certain trigger, something needs to happen, well, maybe there's a triage through an AI chatbot, right? Why not have an agent do the initial triage and determine whether he should really wake up the doctor or not? So there's all kinds of things that are interesting. And again, the best thing that we can do right now is think through how to combine, humans, AI chatbots or agents, devices, and create these sort of workflows where information flows to the right place in the right time, and again, hopefully before something bad happens.
Well, you mentioned China and the new AI which is being released this week. There is so much scare, especially in the America. So much scare. They are making some sort of urban legend around this the new AI which has come from China. But interestingly, there is one more thing which is happening this week, which has happened in the previous week, is that Elon Musk is asking permission for human trials on his Neuralink initiative. So I think, do you really think Neuralink will become a reality in like next 5 years or so?
Yeah, I was trying not to name the technology, but there's many other technologies like that. Of course, Elon Musk is a very visible figure. I frankly don't know if that will take off or not, but I do believe that if you really think back in history, so many things that we thought were completely absurd, we actually doing that these days, right? We could give lots of examples, but it just takes us looking back in history and see how many. I'll give you a personal one. I was in Microsoft Research 13 years ago when we took a project called Red Dog out of Microsoft Research and said, how about banks and financial institutions and retailers take all their data from their data centers and boom, put it on a public data center, call it the cloud, and be it in Dublin, be it in Dubai, be it in Brazil, and have their data stored in a more efficient manner than in their own premises. That I can guarantee you, 14 years ago, was considered a wild shot to the moon. And guess what? I was with 5 other colleagues trying to figure out if we can actually make that work in the commercial world. And eventually we see Microsoft Azure today being, a multi-billion-dollar business, right? So all those things just a matter of time and figuring out the right use cases, the right regulatory matters, the right frameworks for governance. There's a lot of things that need to be figured out, obviously. But as I said, it's the process of innovation. I think that, to go back to your questions, I have no idea if Neuralinks will take off, but I would have no reasons to believe that it won't for sure. I think that as any innovator, whether it's Elon Musk or others, we try certain things. Some of them work, some of them don't work. But if this one doesn't pan out, perhaps a new one will pan out, right? And the question would be, who will adopt it first? What are going to be the best use case? What's the economic model? What are the implications of that? And believe me, once we get the few first, proof of concepts and we start seeing some good results, market will come to it.
Benny, you have been associated with a lot of senior people globally, and also you're doing a lot of research, especially the use of AI in medical space. Do you think human trials, which has been a very subjective issue, so human trials, will that be allowed today or even 5 years down the line to examine the effects of latest technologies? Because so far we have not heard actual human trials happening anywhere. What is your take on that?
Yeah, look. First of all, this is way more of a ethical question, a dilemma for societies to debate in terms of what's the value of that versus what's the risk of that, than actually a scientific question. But that said, let's fast forward a few years based on things that already exist today. They're not just visions. Let's talk about, for example, digital twins, right? There is a lot of, I don't know if you've seen, actually Reid Hoffman, who is giving this course this week, which was at Wharton on AI, he actually created a digital twin. And I can't remember if it was him 10 years ago or something like that, another version of him. And he was having a conversation with the digital twin. And I tell you, it sounds like nonsense, but he said, you know what? I actually learned a lot from that conversation, right? So imagine that we could have our digital twins and that digital twin would go through a trial. Maybe that could be an option, right? So there's many other things that could happen. So I'm not saying for sure this will not happen or for sure this will happen, but I think we'll find with AI ways to do way better simulations with quasi-human creatures, whether it's an avatar, your digital twin, or whatever that's going to be. That may not be exactly a human being, but it could actually have a lot of resemblance to a human being. So you achieve the same goals, perhaps with a little bit less risk or potential damage.
I think when you talk about your own twin talking to yourself, it sounds like the movie Psycho, when when that guy used to have split personality. So from today's standpoint, in today's generation, I think talking to your own twin may sound like, some psychopath situation, but nevertheless.
Listen, we actually talk to ourselves all day long, right? Just a parenthesis. I've been learning from a great person on the executive coaching world, and they actually use a methodology called a mind scan. It's called Hartman's value profile. Long story short, this was developed by actually a Holocaust survivor who spent, I don't know, 50 or 80 years of his life studying the human mindset and trying to understand how human beings can get to a point where, they do things like the Holocaust, for example. And one of the outcomes of that is that he created a scientific proof that we can actually mathematically calculate the value of our own value system and optimize our decisions based on our values. Now, values are things that sound very abstract, but we could actually take that in mathematically. So things actually can happen, right? As you talk about the psychopathic path of that. By the way, most CEOs are psychopaths. If you look at the entrepreneurship world, there's about a third of them, according to research, that are psychopaths. How do we make those things that look like hallucination of an AI system actually help us grow is actually a great exercise, right? But the more we understand the human mind, the better we will actually be able to use AI, right? We're sort of jumping ahead of ourselves. We're trying to imitate the human brain and human intelligence, but we actually don't know how it works. How great will it be as we evolve also neuroscience and we actually understand better how to sort of play with our own minds. But my whole point of this longer story was, in this theory, we learned like we actually have in our brain about 65,000 thoughts, sometimes more, 80,000 thoughts a day, which means we are telling ourselves, I'm going to fail, or I am not worthy, or I am going to make this work. So those things are happening, those conversations are happening, and they actually impact our ability to do things or not.
Well, let's wait and watch what happens. So that brings us to the fourth question, which is about if you could share some success stories and how AI has been implemented the way we are talking anywhere in the world, and what kind of efficiency it brought to the physician's role.
Yeah, so there are really great stories there, especially when you go. I spent a week with colleagues at the Harvard course, the Public School of Health. We actually had people coming from the Mayo Clinic. It's one of the top institutions in the U.S. They talk about some great stories of results there. There's no shortage of case studies on implementations like Johns Hopkins Hospital. They were able to admit patients in a much more efficient way. They had, I think, around over a 20% increase in patient discharges much faster than they could do that. They basically were assigned beds 38% faster. There's a lot of statistics, and again, if you think about a hospital, you want to admit people as soon as possible. You want to discharge them as soon as possible, and you want, more importantly, not to have to readmit them, right, within 30 days or so. So those are like more technicalities. They're about healthcare efficiency, but I can give you like real life examples from here in Israel. I worked for a great AI company here, and we worked with, for example, the Ihilov Hospital in Tel Aviv. We had 5 or 6 projects, different use cases, and I'll give you one very simple one because some of them are super complex to explain. We had a basic issue there. The general manager of the hospital says, look, I have a very high rate of no-shows. Right, we book scheduled people, we call them a day before, we send them SMS, we do every possible thing to make sure they're coming, but we still have a reasonable amount of people who don't show up to their appointment, and that's costly, right? That means that somebody else who needed to be there, another patient, is not going to get to be there. It means that the doctor, who has very limited time, may not use that time properly, and so on. So we actually used a very robust model which is, as you know, garbage in, garbage out, right? So they obviously were trying to predict the probability of people showing up or not showing up and optimize for that. But it's very hard to do that when you don't have enough data. So they use the weather, they use every possible predictor, whether there are some rock concerts or sport events happening on that day, whether there's a traffic accident. I mean, they tried to use a lot of data, but they couldn't really predict very well whether people would show up or not. And we actually used a very powerful model, a system that uses genetic algorithms, so it can make millions, billions of simulations of possibilities. And we looked at data that apparently, logically in our minds, would not have any impact. But we said, what if it does, right? And we, for example, got to, believe it or not, some conclusions that, for example, people who were Holocaust survivors tended not to come to meetings on a Wednesday afternoon. Why, I actually don't know, but it actually was one of the findings out of doing all these simulations. So we basically tried to recommend that when we get people with this particular cluster, in this particular profile, that we actually avoid those time slots. And just by doing those things, there's many other findings in this process. We are able to increase or reduce significantly the percentage of no-show, I think, by 15 or 25%. That's just one very classic problem that every provider has. There are other cases that are a lot more scientific, but I thought I would share this story because it's one of those things that a human being would probably not even create this hypothesis, but we can use AI to find hypotheses that scientists may not think about.
This is so interesting, Benny. It's really amazing that you shared, because I think this is one of the biggest problem the hospitals have. Whenever I book an appointment with the hospital for me or for my parents, they keep following up. I will get SMS, I will get a call, I will get multiple calls, and they will say, hey, you are coming or not? Are you coming? And then after third day, they will say, please come. Things like that. So I think this sometimes can be annoying also, but I think this is a very good use case which is applicable today. I think this is interesting, and thank you for sharing this case study with us. All right, let's move to the last question of the day, which is, what practical tips or best practices that you could recommend physicians so that they can start exploring, they can start using AI today to efficiently execute their work?
Absolutely. And, again, I was reflecting on that just, an hour before this session during this Wharton program. Professor Ethan Mollick was talking about the fact that, as an educator, he's not too concerned about what will happen to teachers in the future, right? Whether they will teach classes differently. I mean, everything's already changed at Wharton just because they're using AI in classroom, for example. But he says, a teacher by definition is a great learner. So that's not an issue. Now, it's not true for every human being that we are fast learners, that we are always learning. I personally love learning, and it's something I enjoy. For many people, they might be more comfortable in their status quo with whatever they've done, and it works well. And so one of the tips, I think, and I've talked this week with 3 or 4 physicians that are collaborating on my research project, is they're the first ones to say, look, we need to avoid this analysis paralysis. Why we're trying to understand how AI works and et cetera, obviously you can't teach AI at a deep level for every single professional. Start doing small things that have no risk, right? How many people have like ChatGPT on their phone, for example, and they were trying to go shopping or write a short article for a magazine or whatever it is? It doesn't need to be something super complicated. Have you tried using, we today have large language models. We have ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. We have lots of different, very easy to use AIs. You don't need to be a data scientist. Can you start learning how to, co-pilot those tasks, whether they are just your daily routines with your application? That's sounds like a very silly thing to say, but once you actually start playing around, by the way, we're all learning that. You're going to start
first of all, fearing it less because now you're doing. You see that in half an hour, how many things you're going to get done. So again, begin with very low risk applications, right? Administrative tasks, simple things, and then start looking at different tools. And once this is becoming part of your life, try to engage in multidisciplinary teams, right? I spent 3 months at the ICU with my father in a hospital in Rio, and I got to see how the physicians in the ICU, they take shifts, but they also have these meetings where they actually make some decisions, and you need different kinds of specialists. So try to interact with multidisciplinary teams. That's a very good way to figure out what are the best use cases for you to interact with them, where this can be used. As I said, in my research, we're going through a very needed use case, which is using AI on expert discussions, right? They just told me this week, look, here in Dubai, we have these meetings. Oncologists sit and discuss cases. Why couldn't we discuss with that assisted by AI and have this, some benefits from that? So again, start just trying that, start going through a little bit of training, start experimenting a little bit in sort of low risk situations, and you'll be surprised how many things you'll discover that are helpful to you, that are very simple to do today with Copilot or other things. And then start thinking about, okay, now how do I influence my organization to invest in really building more robust AI systems for all of us. So that would be my suggestion is, educate yourself, always be learning, collaborate, exchange ideas, try new things, and then of course go to the bigger, bolder goals with your stakeholders aligned with a set of ideas that have been sort of tested, validated, and now you want to just take them to the next level, put them in production, use them on your profession as well.
Well, Benny, to be very frank, whenever I see the doctor, whichever doctor it is, whether a physician or a specialist, they are very busy. They actually look busy, and they are actually very busy. So, they don't have time, and but they are all excited about AI. They are all buying expensive mobile phones because the mobile manufacturers are tom-tomming about AI, S series, iPhone. All of these guys are talking about AI. So because doctors are not poor people, they are very, very well off. So they are all buying AI-based systems today, especially the mobile devices. But as I said, they are very busy. And to do all this, this is the last point to discuss today. To do all this, to implement, to understand AI, and then start practicing, start reading, how practical is it from today's point of view? Especially physicians today.
Yeah, no, you have a very good point, and just to clarify what I'm saying, if you actually think about robust AI systems for hospitals, for example, I'm not suggesting a physician immerse themselves in a very deep area that takes a lot of years to learn. What I'm saying is two things. One, let's go back to the beginning of this conversation. AI is not just a technology or a technique. AI is a change management process. So in order to do that, first of all, you need to get out of your cluster. They say that the new IT people will become the HR, right? So try to get together with your IT team, with your HR team, whoever that is, once in a while, bounce some ideas. I know physicians don't have much time, but my point is, try to have more conversations with other people. Try to see where the touching points are, and eventually you're going to have to rely to an AI expert to do that. But if you're involved in the spurring the project, right? If you actually understand at a high level, there are very light, high-level courses of data science and things like that for physicians, right? They can do that. I was in a course at Harvard with several clinicians, and they spent a couple hours doing a training in large language models, and they were doing some really interesting stuff, right? So what I'm saying is break the barrier. Even if you invest 1 hour a month, 2 hours a month, 4 hours a month, whatever you can do that will get you out of that distance that you have. AI is not something that's out there in the NASA labs. It's everywhere now. And then, of course, realistically, you're not going to try to build an AI system. You should be a physician, but make sure that you have sort of a V team, a virtual team, and again, you can meet half an hour a month, whatever time you have, and just bounce some ideas, some thoughts, kind of a learning group. I think everyone can spare an hour a month easily to just learn something new and make it a priority, right? Whether it's trying something, reading a book, watching a YouTube video. It's very hard to keep up with all the changes. I'm doing that almost full time, and it's super hard. But again, break the barrier. But the best way to get up, to a mountain is do the first step, right? So do the first step, and you'll see that the second, the third steps, they're all going to be less painful. And don't go alone, right? Go with a team. Go with colleagues that are supportive, who are also part of the journey. Everybody's learning together.
Absolutely, Benny. I think your last statements are quite inspirational, especially for the physicians. And I think somebody has to start, and time to start is now, because AI is going to be much more available as we progress into the future. So thank you so much for sharing such inspirational talk with us, with our viewers. It is always a pleasure. But today I let you go, only to catch you again in the next one very soon.
Thank you very much. And thanks a lot. And stay positive and stay healthy.
Thank you, Benny. So friends, we had a fantastic discussion with Benny Rubenstein. He is a research scholar, as I mentioned, and he is actually trying to see how he can help doctors, especially physicians across the world, to adapt the latest AI tools, technologies, etc. So if you are one of the physicians watching our program, or if you watch this video later on, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to us, or you can reach out to Benny directly. His coordinates are given in the description below. Thanks for watching. We will catch you again in the next one.